Hi there BookTube! So today, instead of doing my usual Friday reads, I'm going to be doing my October wrap up, and I'm going to be including the few books that I read this week in my October wrap up and talk about them in more depth, because as you know, I on a weekly basis I wrap up all the books that I read. So normally my wrap ups for the month are generally just me showing you the book and doing a little sort of lowdown. So I'm going to give you the lowdown on how many books I've read and what star ratings, etc. And then this month I only had one 5-star read, and that was one that I read this week. So I'm going to be talking to you more in depth about the books that I read this week. So I hope that makes sense. But I am also going to be doing my BookTuber shout out because I want to make sure that I keep doing these every week. And this week I have picked Olive from A Book Olive. I love Olive's channel. She reads often different books to ones that I would normally pick up, although some do sort of cross over with her, but I find her book choices really interesting. She's always does really interesting and in-depth discussion videos, which I really enjoy watching, and find that often I agree with her on a lot of stances she takes for different things. And she is the organiser of co-organiser of Non-Fiction November, which is a readathon that I'm taking part in over November, which is to sort of promote us and to try and encourage us to read more non-fiction. So I just felt like she really deserved a shout out. She definitely deserves more subscribers than she's got. So go check her out from the link below and subscribe if you like what you see, and I'm sure you will. And more of you get involved in Non-Fiction November if you can, because I just think it's great. There's no pressure, you don't have to read a certain amount of books. It's just sort of one book if you want, or one book a week. They're trying to sort of say to people maybe one book a week, but they're not putting any pressure on. I'm not sure how many I'm going to get to, but I've picked 5 or 6 to keep me going. So yeah, so check out A Book Olive because she's lovely and I love her channel, and she needs or deserves more subscribers. Okay, so let's get into my October wrap up. So this month I read a lot less than last month, but last month was exceptional. This month I read 15 things, and 11 of those were books. I read 2 graphic novels, 1 comic and 1 short story collection. And from those I read 1 5-star book, 6 4-star books and 7 3-star books. I did DNF a book, not because I wasn't enjoying it, it just wasn't the right time for me to be reading it. And I am currently filming this a couple of days early, and I'm still in the process of finishing a book, so I haven't got a star rating for that yet. My BookTuber recommends book for this month was picked for me by Caitlin from the channel Kitty G, and she picked Peter V. Brett, The Painted Man, which is actually the book that I haven't quite finished yet, but I'm enjoying it so far, so I look forward to finishing this, and I will wrap it up in my next week's Friday Reads video. So let's just briefly go through the books that I read this month. The first book that I read was The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater, and I gave this one 3 stars. Next I picked up the graphic novel Everything is Teeth by Evie Wild and graphics by Joe Sumner, and I also gave this one 3 stars. Next was Born of Shadows by Sarah Benson, and I gave this one 4 stars. Then was a Jill Shalvis Lucky Harbour book, which was At Last, and I gave that one 4 stars. I then read Soulmates by Holly Bourne and gave that one 3 stars. I read Take Back the Skies by Lucy Saxon and gave this one 3 stars. The Next Together by Lauren James, and I gave this one 4 stars. The Falconer by Elizabeth May, and I gave this one 4 stars. Next I read the comic Paper Girls issue 1, and this was written by Brian K. Vaughan and graphics by Cliff Chiang. Next was another Lucky Harbour Jill Shalvis book, which was Forever and a Day, and I gave that one 4 stars. I next read a short story collection by CJ Cummings, and I gave that 3 stars, and that was called Shard. And now for the 3 books that I read this week. I'm going to go in rating order. So 2 books I gave 3 stars. The first was a buddy read with Tanya from List Obsessed Reader, and that was my second Agatha Christie ever, The Hollow. This was okay, it just wasn't my favourite read, and I gave this one 3 stars. I think the reason I couldn't give this higher was Poirot didn't really come into this in sort of a third way into the book, and then he didn't really sort of participate into much of the book. It wasn't much about him, and I quite like the idea of that in sort of a crime novel. I want the detective to be sort of leading it a little bit, so that was a bit disappointing. Also, I didn't really like any of the characters in this, and I didn't feel like I could understand the motivation behind some of the things that some of them did that led up to sort of the whodunit type thing. Yeah, it was okay. It was really interesting to read and listen to Tanya's thoughts as well, so I'm glad we buddy read it, but it wasn't my favourite so far, and I gave it 3 stars. Next, I picked up This One Summer by Julian Tamaki and Mariko Tamaki, and this is a graphic novel. This is the story of Rose. She goes to this seaside town every summer, and she meets up with her friend Windy, who's about 1.5 years younger than her. It's about their summer. There's family issues going on in Rose's family. Her parents keep fighting, which makes life uncomfortable, so we're learning about what's going on there. There's sort of a side story going on with one of the boys that works in the local sort of cash and carry grocery store, one-stop type shop, and sort of the local life, and I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a really interesting story. It just didn't give me the emotions that I was hoping it would. I liked the concept, I liked the story, just for some reason it didn't hit me as hard as I hoped. I quite liked the artwork, although I do tend to lean towards more colourful artwork normally, but I liked it. I just didn't love it, and so I also gave this one 3 stars. And then to my book of the month. I buddy read this book with Mercedes at Mercy's Bookish Musings. It was a last minute addition to my reading, and I'm so glad I picked it up. This is my 1 5-star book of the month, and that's Ruby by Cynthia Bond. I've heard mixed reviews about this from other people, and I can see where other people are possibly coming from. Needless to say, do not pick this book up if you are triggered by child abuse or paedophilia or anything like cruelty towards children, which is possibly why I found it so hard hitting, because having a child myself, my heart broke over and over again. I know that the negative criticisms with this book are that there's just too much sort of in your face things going on, but I didn't mind that. The one thing that I was worried about actually going into it was it be compared to Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and having read 100 Years of Solitude, the sort of magical realism type isn't normally my thing. But I really, really loved this book. I mean, it made me cry. It made me absolutely disgusted with humanity. But I should probably tell you what it's about before I start throwing in all of the things that it made me feel. This is the story set in a Texas town, a small Texas town, an all-black Texas town, in the sort of flits between the sort of 40s and the 70s. We're following two main characters, Ruby, who is a young girl at the beginning of the story, and she meets a young boy called Ephraim, and they become friends. Ephraim is the son of the local preacher, the local reverend, and his family is quite tumultuous, and his father has to have his mother committed to a mental asylum, and then his father disappears off preaching his religion in various different places and is never home. So Ephraim is brought up mainly by his sister, his elder sister Cecilia. Ruby and Ephraim form a friendship of sorts, and but Ruby ends up moving to New York, and the beginning of this story is when Ruby has been back from New York and Ephraim is building up the courage to go and see her. She has disintegrated since coming back to the town, is just not herself, talks to herself. People think that she's gone crazy, and we just learn about Ruby's life, what happened to her as a child, what's taken her to this point. There is voodoo and superstition and religion and tears, and I just thought it was a really beautiful, powerful, evocative novel. I really just can't do this book justice. It was an easy read, but it was a beautiful read, and it was, yeah, everything that I needed and wanted to get me back into reading this month. I've been totally addicted to the Gilmore Girls TV series, and this really pulled me back into reading, gave me what I needed, and it's a brilliant story, and I can't recommend it high enough. So this is definitely my top pick of the month. It's my 1 5-star read, and I recommend that if you like the sound of it, that you pick it up. So that's my wrap up for October. Look out for my November TBR, which will be coming up in the next couple of days, and I look forward to hearing and seeing what you guys have read this month, what you found enjoyable. Have you read any 5-star books this month? Let me know in the comments below, because I always love to add to my TBR, as you know, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Bye for now, BookTube.